his 5 minutes in the first round. He's recognized for 5 minutes. Congressman Graves.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Dr. Redfield. I come to you from Georgia, Oklahoma, CDC, and thank you for your service over these challenging last several months. I know it's been difficult, but we're grateful for your work. I wanted to just change just a little bit to antibody and antibody testing, and if you could maybe share with us a little bit about what we can expect from FDA approvals, if there are any FDA approvals of any testing kits, and if you could just give us a little feedback, a little insight into that, what we can expect there.
Thank you very much for your question, Congressman. There are a series of antibody tests that initially the FDA allowed the EUA to come out. A lot of tests got on the market, and then they had to show that they really were valid. A number of them has been pulled back, but there are a series of antibody tests, and I can get you the names of them that are really a quality test approved by the or EUA'd by the FDA. The real issue is, what does antibody mean? And right now, we don't really know exactly what antibody means. If you have a valid antibody, it means that you've been infected at one point in time with the virus. We don't know how long that antibody will last, but we don't know the critical question is, when does the antibody test mean you're immune to the virus? And that's what we're still trying to find. It does help us as CDC to understand the full extent of the infection in our nation. You know, our current estimates is about 5% of the American public got infected during this initial experience. That does mean that about 95% are still susceptible, just for us to understand what might be coming. Some cities, it's much different, like New York, obviously, and the New York metropolitan area. But that is the key. Right now, it's a surveillance tool that we have. Whether it has clinical implications or not, we still don't know.
And looking at that list of who you might recommend would be approved vendors, it seems like there's a lot of potential for fraud from a lot of vendors out there.
I'm sorry.
And then maybe you could share with us also, how do you think, what about the accuracy and the reliability of the testing as well?
Yeah, I think your point's critical, and I can have my staff get you the actual list of the testing that we know we do not recommend and that the FDA is asking to get off the market. And then there's another group that have really performed well, and I can make sure you get that. Ortho is one of the main ones that we've been using for antibody testing. And so I can get you that and make sure your office has it.
Okay, great. Thank you. And as we were talking about testing and the COVID-19 testing and the testing sites, is there any value to, at the same time, testing for antibodies? I know a lot of individuals go to get tested because they're concerned they may currently have the virus, but is there any value in testing for both simultaneously? And then on top of that, do you believe that antibody testing is something that should be paid for by the government, as we've had previously as the COVID-19 testing is?
Yeah, the challenge that I have there is just trying to understand what the clinical utility of antibody testing is. And CMS and they'll all pay for it if it's for a specific clinical indication. And my understanding is they currently pay for it, with the clinical indication being that you have been previously infected by this virus. So that's the one part. I was going to say something else, but I'm having an adult moment. The first part of your question
was about should the antibody test be conducted simultaneously along with the COVID-19 test when an individual goes to be tested? Is there
I think the one area that it has a major clinical relevance is in the children. You've seen about this hyperinflammatory syndrome that we're seeing in children. Luckily, it's very rare, but it really occurs post a COVID infection, and it does help understand that that's really the causation. So we do use antibody testing in trying to define the case definition of children that have this new rare inflammatory system. But I think the answer to your question, just to be honest and transparent, is I don't know.
Well, thank you. And so to just sort of sum up on antibody testing, we really don't know what it means right now. somebody tests positive, it sounds like we don't know, is it a protectant or not, or how long might it last? And those results have yet to be determined. Is that how I heard you say earlier?
That's correct, and it is one of the critical things I think we're going to learn between now and January.
Great. Thank you again, and thank you, Madam Chair, for letting me jump in a little late here today.
Clark.
Thank you so much.